Okay, how's this? All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Shin-Yi Pai, and I'm Program Director at Town Hall. On behalf of the staff at Town Hall Seattle, Wing Museum, and our friends at Elliott Bay Books, it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's presentation with Jeff Yang, Phil Yu, and Philip Wang. Their new book, Rise, A Pop History of Asian America from the 90s to Now, is the subject of tonight's talk. As we get underway, I would like to acknowledge our institution stands on the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, particularly the Duwamish. We thank them for our continuing use of the natural resources of their ancestral homeland. We're so glad to have you join us tonight. The presentation will run about 60 minutes, including Q&A. To submit your questions for the Q&A portion of the event, please enter meet.ps/yang or scan the QR code right now on the screen with your smartphone. We'll drop this link in the chat as well, and you can submit a question at any time. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, and you can help us by keeping your own question concise. Also, a reminder, if you'd like to view the program with closed captions, click the CC button in the bottom right corner of the video player. Town Hall is adding new events every day. Coming up next Monday, Francis Kehua Wang, who is featured in Rise, shares lyric reflections on family, hope, and the Asian American experience. And Gish Jen and Daniel Tam Claiborne discuss Jen's latest collection of short fiction, Thank You, Mr. Nixon, on April 5. Visit our website to learn more and join our email list to get the latest update. Town Hall's work is made possible through your support and the support of our sponsors. As part of our Arts and Culture series, this event is supported by For Culture, Arts Fund, City of Seattle Arts and Culture, and Washington State Arts Commission. Town Hall is also a member-supported organization, so I'd like to thank all the members who are joining us. Lastly, you'll want to get your own copy of Rise from our friends at Elliott Bay Books. If you're joining us here at Town Hall tonight, you can pick up a copy in the lobby. Otherwise, please use the link in the chat below to pick up your copy through Elliott Bay. Jeff, Phil, and Philip will be in the lobby for a public signing following the event. Jeff Yang has been observing, exploring, and writing about the Asian American community for over 30 years. He launched one of the first Asian American national magazines, A Magazine, in the late 90s and early 2000s, and now writes frequently for CNN, Quartz, Slate, and elsewhere. He has published 3 books: the New York Times bestselling memoir, I Am Jackie Chan, My Life in Action, Once Upon a Time in China, A History of the Cinemas of Hong Kong, Taiwan, and the Mainland, and Eastern Standard Time, A Guide to Asian Influence on American Culture. Phil Yu is the founder and editor of the popular Asian American news and culture blog, Angry Asian Man, which has had a devoted following since 2001. His commentary has been featured and quoted in the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, NPR, and elsewhere. Philip Wang is the co-founder of the hugely influential production company Wang Fu Productions. Since the mid-2000s, his creative work has garnered over 3 million subscribers and 500 million views online, as well as recognition from NPR and CNN for its impact on Asian American representation. Please join me in welcoming Jeff Yang, Phil Yu, and Philip Wang.
Hey. Hello.
What's up? What's up?
Hello, Seattle. Seattle in the church. First of all, we have been doing this for a couple of days physically and for a couple weeks virtually. And it feels like a lot of the conversations we've had have been very structured, right? We have like an interviewer, it's like, Jeff, and then Phil, and then Philip, and then Jeff, and then Phil, and then Philip. And today we're kind of free. We have no interviewer.
No one's holding us back today. No moderator. We're moderating ourselves.
Yes.
This is going to get messy.
Self-moderation. So what that means is we're trying to make this a little looser. We invite you and encourage you to ask us questions.
I already see some of your questions up here. These are great. This is a really convenient tool. Yeah. Essentially, you guys are moderating us now, so that's exciting.
But don't be afraid to not be too moderate in those questions. Get out there. I figured we can start by talking a little bit about the book itself, since some of you guys may not have seen it yet.
Why don't you actually start by introducing who you are?
Oh, we could do that too.
There might be people here. That's so we're not so arrogant to believe that everyone here knows who we are.
That's out there. Yes, let's do that. I will start. And my name is Jeff Yang, and I am, I guess I'm an author, a journalist, columnist for the Wall Street Journal. I've written for the San Francisco Chronicle. I think for the last 6 or 7 years, most of what people have introduced me as is the father of Hudson Yang from Fresh Off the Boat, which I own. I mean, I love that kid.
I hope so.
He's all right, yeah.
But this book, obviously, is something which is equally lovable. And it's something that the three of us put together. Phil.
My name is Phil Yu, not to be confused with Philip Wang over here. We are the way we are sort of decompressing the confusion is I'm Phil and he's Philip.
That's how we're gonna. So in questions, like keep that in mind because I already saw one that was Phil. Which Phil? We don't know. So help us out.
But I am probably best known for running a blog called Angry Asian Man for the last 21 years. Yeah, thank you. So for the last 2 decades, I've basically been a professional angry Asian man.
But he's not that angry. He's a very nice person.
Professionally angry, personally not so angry. So
I actually feel like I have the biggest chip on my shoulder in general, and you maybe less so. Philip is the nicest, I think, of us.
Well, yeah, it depends on who you're talking to, I guess, yeah.
that's it. This is Philip Wang.
So I'm Philip Wang, Philip with one L. I'm a co-founder of a YouTube channel production company called Wang Fu Productions, so today someone told us that their intern called it that old YouTube channel, and I was like
that classic vintage YouTube channel.
Actually, I went to like a YouTube event and we were categorized as a legacy channel, so that's how.
Oh my God.
And I'm fine with that. Even like that's how social media and the internet is. That anything past like a year and you're already like old. So it's okay. The fact that we've been around as long as we have, over 18 years as a channel, like is mind-boggling. So just really grateful. If we have over 3 million subscribers, have made hundreds of short films and sketches and things like that. But my first experience with these two guys goes back further than even I realized. When I was in high school, I read Jackie Chan's autobiography, thinking it was Jackie Chan that wrote it. And then when I met Jeff, I found out that he was the one that wrote it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've already consumed your content. And then with Phil, when we were just starting out at UC San Diego, he posted about one of our videos on his blog, and at the time, that was like our Variety. That was our Hollywood Reporter, because we had no content for Asian people out there anyways. So getting on his blog was like a made-it moment for me as a college kid. So,
full honesty, I didn't really like that first.
He was angry. You were probably angry about it. You're like,
I wasn't crazy about it, but I'm glad you kept on going.
Hey, it's all right. It worked out.
This is where it all gets real, right? I think it's kind of interesting because even in our self-introductions, it shows a little bit of the reason why we ended up coming together to do this. I mean, we've been friends for a while and gotten to be much better friends during the book, but there's also a sense in which we've kind of passed the torch or the mic, right, from decade to decade. I started out, as Phil kind of keyed in the world of print when things were on dead wood.
It's here for print, yeah, print.
Hey, the book's on print, man. The book is not a dead medium.
Honestly, when people say, I think we can get it on like Audible, I'm like, really? But, okay. So I had this magazine called A Magazine Inside Asian America way back when.
Yeah,
thank you for those who remember.
A Magazine.
Thank you. Don't ask me about lifetime subscriptions. We had those back when. I was like, whose lifetime? Yours, mine, the magazine's? But that magazine lasted until 2000, and that was about the time when Phil launched Angry Asian Man.
Yeah. I read A Magazine back in the day. Yeah. I started Angry Asian Man in 2001. It was not meant to be starting something. Just started, this is prior to social media, so I just wanted a place to write down the things that I was thinking about in terms of my community, my identity. I was just out of college, which is a very formative time for a lot of people in terms of figuring out who they are and who I was as an Asian American. So just put that on, sort of a cobbled together website made from HTML, and seemed like the internet was not going away anytime soon, so it seemed like a good place to plant some seeds. Again, did not think I was starting something, but over time, things grew, and it provided me a very interesting vantage point to view this unwieldy community called Asian America.
Yeah, similarly, I definitely relate to that, just starting something completely unintentionally with no plan. A lot of times when I speak about Wang Fu, people are always like, oh, like, how did you know you wanted to be a filmmaker, yada, yada. I literally had nothing like this in my cards. I never ever thought that I would be even writing a book like this, much less getting to say that it was a New York Times bestseller. Like, these are things I just felt like I just was always adapting and just kind of saying yes and trying and believing like, hey, I think I could do that. Certain things, there's things I know that I can't do, but some things I would go, okay, I think I can do that. And then so when it came time to like make these videos and utilize making a website and eventually utilizing YouTube, the first time we even posted something on YouTube was really just for free bandwidth. Guys, remember that there was a time when you can just upload anything and it was just fine. Like, you had to pay for the megabytes that you downloaded. But anyways, yeah, so like I feel really grateful that all the decisions or all the, not even decisions, that just the going with the flow kind of led to the work that we did and the fan bases that we created and eventually led to this moment. And just, again, to Jeff's point of just kind of us all speaking about our backgrounds and how we started and the decades essentially of when we kind of came of age is really cool, because also as an audience we're getting a very widespread of people that are representative of this very amazing time that Asia, America, came to be in what we cover in the book. Like, we have people that are clapping for A Magazine and then people that are clapping for a YouTube channel, right? And I think that's really, really cool to have in one room, and I think that's why this book is so special, because it brings together so much of what we all have identified with or have heard about. And for me, as like maybe the younger one, oh, there's things from like the 90s and 80s. Oh, I remember, I've heard of that. I don't really know about it, but I can read about it in this book. People that are maybe a little bit older, oh, I know that there's these new things that are happening on the TikToks and stuff. Okay, I can read about that too. It's a beautiful thing. I think that's really great.
I mean, let's talk about what the book is, right? I mean, it's big. This is almost 500
Who already
pages.
has the book? I mean, I didn't assume. I saw some people. I thought some people are coming to this event, going to gauge the authors and then decide if they're going to buy it or not. But I'm glad that most people have it. Yeah.
Well, they're good gifts. This is a big ass book, and when we first started writing it, I think we intended to 300 pages. I think was what we originally had pitched, but the book grew in the telling, right? Because we realized our goal from the get-go was to try to take these 3 decades that we felt were incredibly pivotal, right? That were essentially the period in which Asian America went from being a blank box that we had to check to something resembling a culture, a canon, a larger community. And for us, these were the beats of our adulthood, right? I curated the 1990s because that's when I came out of college, and that's when I launched this magazine. And Phil, similarly, he covered the 2000s because that's when he started looking at the world through the lens of Angry Asian Man. And then Philip, in the 2010s, he was kind of, taking the world by storm with that old YouTube channel.
That's not a lie. And like, I gotta say, like, yeah, it started off supposedly supposed to be 300 pages, and even that to me sounded long. But when Jeff first approached, and maybe we can talk about how this book even came to be, right? A little bit bamboozled by Jeff. He gave me this quick phone call of like, hey, I've been thinking about what we've been talking about, which we can go into in a little bit, and I really want to write a book about, just Asian pop culture or the history. Do you want to be part of it? And I'm just thinking, sure, why not? Is this really going to go anywhere? And then 4 months later, we sold it, and it was time to write. And then I think all of us were kind of having this like, oh shit moment. Like, this is a little
We have to write it. Oh.
Yeah. Like we celebrate, yeah, we sold a book. Oh, whoa, we have to actually do it. And oh, whoa, it's actually like a mountain of work. And even the mountain of work that we thought it was, as we were diving in, it just became more and more, because the more we uncovered, or the more interviews we did, the more people were like, oh, you got to talk to this person. Oh, we have to include this person or this story. So it just kind of grew and grew and grew.
I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, though. Let's talk about the origins of the collaboration, and then also like why, because I think you have a pretty interesting story about what sort of prompted wanting to tell this story.
Well, I think we all have kind of different perspectives of it. I'll start. For me, 2018, Crazy Rich Asians came out. Landmark, milestone movie for us as a community. I love it. I love what it did for us as from a 10,000 foot level, and it definitely did change things. And I remember, it was a moment where we, as a community, kind of all galvanized, and we said, hey, we finally have this one shot to show Hollywood that we can move tickets, that we should have, that our community wants more, the world wants more. And when the movie came out and was successful, there were all these articles that were, I don't know if you remember seeing, maybe you remember seeing some of them. First movie in 25 years with Asian leads. First movie since Joy Luck Club with an all-Asian cast. And I remember thinking, man, it makes it sound like it was Joy Luck Club, 25 years of nothing, and then Crazy Rich Asians. And it's like, we haven't done anything in between. But I know that we have, because I was there doing my own thing on YouTube, and I know that these guys were there doing their own things. And it just made me feel a little sad that the mainstream just completely flew over these 3 decades and only saw these 2 movies. And there was something really worrisome about that hey, if no one's out there is going to tell it at this point, then for sure there's not going to be a new article that goes back into the 90s and say, hey, remember this thing in the 90s that was a thing? So really, like, a lot of stuff was going to get forgotten if it wasn't documented. So that was I just had a feeling of like sadness that, oh man, we're never going to get that kind of coverage. I never thought that it could be turned into a book, though. That's where Jeff stepped in. But you have your own perspective of why you wanted to go.
I mean, as the guy who sort of assembled this this trio,
Tricked us into collaborating with you, you mean?
I think a lot of it came down to the fact that I have obviously respected both your guys' work, but also knew that we each had really interesting ringside seats. Granted, ringside seats that are filtered through particular lenses, right? And ones which we know are limited by who we are, right? We're 3, East Asian guys, straight men, 2 of whom are named Phil. So our diversity was a little bit limited.
Strong Phil representation, though.
Definitely, that was a demographic we were absolutely on top of. But because of that, we would have to extend out our limbs, our connections, our networks to the people around us who we respected and who we loved and who we knew could help tell this story. And I knew that nobody knew as many people, not just had seen as many things as these 2 guys. So each of us, the way I guess it came to life was this idea of how do we curate these chapters that are missing in our history? And they're missing because we lived them. It's hard to see history when you're in it, right? But this was history for us. And for me, the history really comes out of the fact that the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, these are the 3 decades in which that first set of cohorts of people, the first children of the hardworking immigrants who came in the 1960s after the Hart-Celler Act, right, removed these racist quotas that prevented Asians from coming to the United States. I mean, we were first Chinese, and then all of us were excluded. There was literally the Asiatic excluded zone. And until 1965, just a tiny trickle of Asians were allowed to come into this country. But after 65, all of a sudden, the dam broke, and our parents came here. And they expected us to do something. And we kind of did what they expected us to do, but we also did a lot of other stuff. There were 3 decades of people who kind of kicked at the traces of both perceptions and expectations, our parents' wishes, and
Yeah, Harvard.
yes, and our social peer pressure. And we built this thing, right? 30 years. You mentioned Margaret. We'll talk more about that later. But, you know, what was most interesting to us is that over the course of these 30 years, we had this big feeling that every single shot on goal we had to actually hit, right? And if we failed ever, everything about Asian America would go right back into the trash. We would salt the earth. There would never be another Asian thing. Because we know that happens with white movies. When a white movie fails, you'll never see another white movie, right? Not true. That has been something, though, that has weighed heavily on us. So it's taken those 30 years of shooting and trying, kicking and failing, and finally getting to this point where it feels like maybe it can't all be taken away so soon.
Yeah, I think at the heart of it, though, for a lot of it, for my lifetime, it's been this struggle when it comes to the way we talk about Asian Americans in this country. It's like, who gets to tell our story, right? Do we have agency over how our story is told? Who gets to decide what stories are worthy, right? And a lot of this book is us saying, like, you know what, the stories that we lived and our community has lived, like, these are the things no one has talked about. Let's talk about that and make those stories worthy. Outside of what sort of the mainstream Joy Luck Club to Crazy Rich Asians gaze has overlooked, you know? Because for far too often, I mean, if you just look at the spread of what, say, Hollywood or mainstream journalism or whatever gets sort of accepted and hollowed and lifted up as the Asian thing, it's according to some other gatekeeper, right? That is trying to tell a story about us that's not necessarily true or real or even visible, right? The fact is, most of it is actually marked by invisibility, and so the book itself, I think, for me, has been a way of saying, like, here's some things that we all know, right? As Asian Americans, that we lived through, but maybe we thought, like, this was just our thing, nobody else knew about it, or maybe it's just me and my friends. And I hope that when people read it, they'll be like, yes, this is something that we all share together. Like, oh, this is, if you know, you know. That's going into this now, talking about a lot, I'm like, kind of like, what I like about the reaction to the book is like, if you know, you know. And so I really like the fact that one of the things that people have told us since the book has come out is saying, like, I wish this book had existed when I was a kid. And this is the book that I never knew I needed, but I really wanted this, you know. So that's been really illuminating.
Yeah, I think, at least for me, you know, growing up, you know, in the 90s, I definitely never really felt that, that there was an Asian American culture. And I feel like a lot of kids, children of immigrants that are you know, fresh to this country, or their parents kind of had to figure out how to assimilate best, a lot of times we are kind of forced to just choose to assimilate to the pre-existing cultures of, like, our surroundings, right? And so that's why you have, you know, more whitewashed kids, or you have some kids that go towards alternative punk skaters, or some that are more hip-hop or whatever. And what I love about this book is that it really highlights that, hey, we actually did have our own things, but we just didn't realize it when we were living it. We had these shared experiences, and we were connected, and here are some examples, right? And there's so much in it. Like, I think a really interesting thing is when a lot of people first get the book, they don't actually realize what's inside. They see, like, we've been posting about the cover, but literally it's so visual. There's so many pieces, and a lot of it is, yes, some of, like, those watershed moments that are mainstream. But even so, those mainstream things, we got to interview the people themselves and get their perspective. We have a piece about William Hung, you know, and talking about that from an Asian person's perspective.
It's an interview with him. I mean, that
Right.
guy's actually doing pretty well. Like, he's like a life
great.
coach.
William Hung's doing great. But then there's a lot of, like, nuanced things that, you know, like Phil's saying, that you kind of have you'd be surprised that, oh, other people knew about this too, or that this was a thing, and those are the pieces that I love most in this book, actually, that are, I would have never thought that we would have something about this canonized in a book. We have a piece about Asian Avenue, You know, like that's crazy to me.
If you know, you know.
And there's so many things that are not just about celebrities and movies. There's things that are really really nuanced and I'm just really glad that we were able to get a hold of a lot of these people. Jin the MC going through his entire BET Freestyle Friday run and having him break down his own raps. That's like
I envisioned that when I conceived of that one, I was like, I want him to go and I want him to watch each battle and go through it with us, like Michael Jordan, The Last Dance. Have you guys seen that documentary? I wanted him to do that, and he did it. I mean, he broke it down for us, like
What he was thinking.
what he was thinking.
feeling.
He remembers it very clearly, and and you hear him talk about it, and you're like, oh, it's no surprise, like you would be so good at what you do. This gift of gab that you have, it was one of my favorite pieces. Yeah.
I gotta say, that was one of the things which really blew my mind the most, right? That we had so many people who were willing to give us their time and just sit down with us across a Zoom screen, because we all had lots of free time, kind of, during this pandemic, and just go through their histories, go through what was inside their minds, what was happening when they were actually doing the things that over these 3 decades were signal achievements to us, right? We had John Chu, talking about the run-up, the road to Crazy Asians, right? We had Joy Luck Club to talk about those 2 brackets, right? We had
Jeremy Lin.
Oh, yeah. We had Jeremy Lin literally giving us, talking to Philip about the inside story of what was going through his head when Linsanity was happening. And I think that ability to sort of reach out to people and recapture, with them, alongside them, step by step, behind the scenes, inside their heads, these critical moments in our history is part of what made this entire exercise so fabulous.
Yeah, just really quickly, I definitely want to get into the Q&A because there's a lot of questions coming in. But a lot of people asked, how did we even choose all the pieces that went in? Because there's so many, there's almost 500 pages worth of information. And it really wasn't that scientific. I think people think that we had this really...
There was an algorithm.
Yeah, like this process that was very sacred. No, we literally after we got the green light to start, we were on a Zoom call. This was back in 2020, mind you. So this was at the height of the lockdown, and we said, hey, we have to start writing this book via Zoom, and we just got on a Google Doc. And met through Microsoft Teams sometimes, if Microsoft's here.
By the way, we spoke at Microsoft earlier today.
Microsoft Teams.
And we were telling the story about this Google Doc thing, and I purposely left out Google Doc. I said, we opened up the doc.
The Doc S. Right.
Our Microsoft Word document. which
Excel
you can share
spreadsheet.
through their cloud, yeah. And we just honestly just started throwing anything and everything. Things that we didn't think would make it, or things that whatever we thought was cool, we cared. I had to get it, I think we all had to get over a little bit of, are they gonna think this is dumb if we just threw everything on this sheet. And we started kind of whittling it down, or we started basically just going through each line and saying, okay, who could do this? All right, this is important to you, you can do it. Someone that can speak really well on this one, go find that person. You don't have direct connection to that person, go interview that person. And so we just really started to highlight, okay, Jeff, and we would look at color-coded, oh, man, Jeff's taking on a lot. Let's find him some support. Oh, I can take that on, things like that. We also were very mindful, as Jeff joked earlier, that diversity-wise, the authors here are heavily Phil represented, and we wanted to make sure that we were inclusive of finding other contributors that could bring in their voices and bring in their perspectives that were outside of our straight East Asian male perspective, right? So we wanted to make sure it was balanced in terms of those stories as well, to make sure that it wasn't just all, hey, what do we think was important to Asia America? Yeah. Should we jump into some questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
You guys got a lot of questions, and I think it's very, very endearing that the highest voted question right now, which is such a cool feature that you guys can vote things up, is, were you able to enjoy Seattle a bit? That's so nice of you guys.
You know, I have to
It's
say,
like what a parent would ask.
yeah, seriously, and I wish we had more time, to be honest. But we've been in Seattle. We've been to Seattle multiple times before and love it. You know, we love the gray skies. We love.
What are you talking about? We got some beautiful weather today. You're
We
welcome.
did. The afternoon was very nice.
You're welcome.
There were some places we wanted to hit up. We wanted to go out to the Wing Luke Museum. Shout out Wing Luke. You know. We wanted to, if we could, head out to Bruce and Brandon's grave.
Bruce Lee has a very special. I'm wearing my Bruce Lee socks today because this is Seattle, and you know, he's one of Seattle's favorite sons, and I have very obviously. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge fan and look up to Bruce Lee quite a bit. We have a podcast called They Call Us Bruce, and the Bruce is in a direct allusion to Mr. Bruce Lee. So. I feel like one of our top, if we had more time, like we probably would have gone to the cemetery to check it.
Philip actually said, should we lay this on Bruce's grave?
Leave a book for him.
I was like, that would be a very nice thing. Yeah, but.
So the offering. It asked, what have we enjoyed the most? Yeah, should we go to, I feel like we need to go to Dick's. They haven't had Dick's before. So I feel like we got to, you know, we have In-N-Out, you know, so there's always this debate of all this stuff, so I don't know. I feel like you guys should try it.
Is Paseo still a thing? Is it? Yeah? I want to go there.
It's funny. There's a lot of things that are about this book, but also just things that are just about us too. I'm trying to make this balance. Let's start with this one. What do you think is missing from this book? So Asian of you guys to just not appreciate what's in there.
Literally, why is this book a B+?
Wow. We just spent so long talking about how difficult it
500
was.
pages. Yeah, exactly.
It's actually not, we keep saying it's 500 pages. It's actually 494.
Actually, it's 482.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We rounded up.
In the missing 6 pages, this is what would have been there. Honestly,
It's a good question.
It's a good question because there are 2 things that limited us, right? One was there are people we reached out to who were not able to get back to us. And we won't say who those names are, but there were people who we could not talk to, either because they chose not to or because they were too busy. And you know what? We respect that, right? Rise to, whatever. But there's also the fact that time moves forward like an arrow. And the wildest thing for me is that, you know, during the pandemic, we had this real fear that that arrow was going to hit a tree and stop, right? That there was so much just shit going on around us, right? Not just the pandemic, but obviously this other epidemic of anti-Asian hatred, hostility, harassment. We were afraid that maybe all of the progress and momentum we had was going to just come to a standstill. And then things started to loosen up a little bit, and everything unleashed at once, right? I mean, it's like, holy shit, you know, Chloe Kim and Snisa Lee and you know, Nathan Chen, they're all winning Olympic medals. And then, you know, we've got these movies coming out, you know, Turning Red and you know, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, the momentum did not stop, and in fact, it accelerated. And, you know, Philip was supposed to be writing the 2010s.
Hey, I did my job.
No,
We're
you did.
in the
I'm not-
2020s now, okay? Go
So
find
the
some
reason why it's a
TikToker
B
to do
plus
in
is
2020s.
Philip. No, I'm just kidding. But then we had this Beyond section. And the Beyond section was to encapsulate the stuff that comes after. And what we realized was that all this Beyond stuff was accelerating. The 2010s already was going to be the biggest chapter because, you know, you look at the 90s, it's like, you know, we had to pick and choose. 2000s, a little bit more. 2010s, whoa, we had a lot to talk about. Beyond, if we had just had a few more months, you know, the book could have been 800 pages.
But then we would have never stopped. You know what I mean? We had to put an expiration date on our draft, I think.
Actually, to that point, we did stop. And we stopped, August or something? Because we thought we were going to have this book come out in November of last year.
We got stopped by the supply chain. There's literally not enough paper to print the book. And so that's why the book got pushed to March. I don't... Should I talk about the typos and things like that?
Yeah. There's some mistakes.
We put the draft to bed. We put it to bed, and then we had to sit there and just wait, right, for it to come out. Meanwhile, we're looking at the thing, we're like, wait, there's mistakes. There's finding all these mistakes. And and we can't go back and do anything to it. It's just locked.
And we proofread it. We definitely spent the time to do it, but man, 482 pages.
We had a lot to do. Come on, it was a lot.
I mean, it's not stuff that like necessarily impacts your pleasure of the book, but there are definitely like
It's stuff that pains us as authors
Yes.
just to see it, right?
Yes.
Just like,
B minus.
I would have. I've said this before, but the person I wanted to interview for the book that, honestly, it just did not occur to us while we were brainstorming. It's like I wanted to talk to Yo-Yo Ma. I would have liked to talk to him because he's our genuine, bona fide, like classical music rock star, right? And he's a national treasure, and he's Asian American, and I would just.
we could have gotten him.
I wish. I know. I wish. Honestly, we didn't think about it.
You don't
till
know
later.
if you could have gotten him. Could we have gotten him? Well, this is
Yo,
a lot of
yo,
confidence.
yo.
But just think about being on a Zoom with Yo-Yo Ma. That would have been amazing.
No, Microsoft Teams with Yo-Yo Ma. Check yourself. I'm gonna. There's some really heavy questions in here too, like just about us. Also, like there's one I know Jeff, you have we all have a story here, but what was the? Oh shoot, where did it go? What was the first experience of racism that you experienced?
Wow. Me particularly.
No, just each of
okay.
us. Each,
It's like you look like somebody who gets a lot of racism.
hard U-turn. I just feel like that there's like.
Well, actually, I will answer that because, so each of us began each chapter with a first-person memoir, right? A little bit of a look back at that decade through our own eyes before we brought in all these other voices to fill out the rest of the stuff that, we weren't in or that we didn't see or that just need another filter. And I began my story literally talking about growing up in Staten Island, New York, right? Which, for those of you who have been to New York, is the New Jersey of New York. And our family was the only Asian family in our neighborhood. My parents had moved us there thinking it would be safer for us because we were in a harder part of Brooklyn at the time. And it wasn't safer because, the playgrounds and the corners, I mean, it was a neighborhood where, the kids would stand around and shout out and do stuff. And Halloween, actually, the first Halloween my parents ever let us go out and participate in. They were like against it in general. They thought it was dangerous. You don't want to eat stuff people give you. And also, why buy clothes you only wear once a year, No point. But so we went out actually in these outfits that were actually our Chinese school performance outfits. Like I had, my martial arts outfit, little flat sole shoes, and my sister was in like a ribbon dance outfit, and we're walking down this block, and these kids who are armed with like the weapons of mass destruction of Halloween see us and like, holy shit, these kids are hilarious. Let's pelt them with eggs and. And yeah, they basically catcalled us home, and we went inside, covered with yolk all over us, some metaphor in that somewhere, and never had another Halloween until college. But that moment really kind of underscored for me the sort of weird notion that, maybe I was different and didn't really fit in this space.
Phil, what about you? Your first experience, if you
This is not the first, but this is the one that is most burned into my brain and my heart. I was in junior high, and I was at the bus stop, and this car of teens stopped at the red light, and then when the light turned green, they passed right by me, and there was a guy hanging out the window, the passenger side. He's a scrub, he's
Of his best friend's ride, was that?
And he pulled his eyes back, and was like, ching chong, and they drove off, and I was like, I just got drive-by ching chonged.
I had that recently, actually. Yeah.
But I mean, that one is like,
That guy gets around.
look, man, this is a shared trauma in which, like, if you grew up East Asian in America, you've gotten the ching chong before, right? You've gotten sort of this like mocking approximation of an Asian language, and then the universal sign for chink, which is pulling your eyes back, right?
Yeah.
So it's been like over 20 years since that happened. It's like I still like have not stopped thinking about it,
I'm gonna bring a different perspective in, and say that I feel very fortunate that where I grew up, which was still predominantly white suburb, my parents surrounded me with a lot of Asian families, friends, role models. So I always felt very proud of my Asianness. I never felt othered. Even in my schools, I always had Asian friends. So I feel, in a sense, yeah, very lucky, and I guess you could say sheltered, where a feeling of like Asian racism never at least got down to me as a kid, and I almost feel like that gave me a little bit of a superpower to come up through my adolescence and into college very unapologetically Asian. So that when I was making content, like when I first started making stuff on YouTube, everyone was Asian, and I didn't have any chip on my shoulder of like, oh, what are people gonna think? Or, oh, is this weird? It's just, these are my friends. I'm gonna show them. If you care, that's your problem, you know? So, and I think because of that, because people were able to see that content, it empowered them. And so by the time I was experiencing drive-by ching-chongs, I already had this pride that I didn't feel like I was, as hurt maybe if I got pelted as a kid. I already felt that, oh, you guys are the jackasses, or you guys are the idiots. And I would get angry versus feel ashamed. So
as Phil says, that's a you problem.
That's a you problem. Yeah, if there's too many Asians in my YouTube video, that's a you problem. So I know that that's not the experience of a lot of Asian Americans in this country, especially speaking at universities all around. I know that there's a lot of people who were the only Asian kid in their school or school district. That really is the power of representation, being able to see people that are like you and feel proud of who you are and feel connected to someone and something. So I feel very, very fortunate in that sense.
How chicken shit is a drive-by ching-chong, by the way? Come on, man.
Yeah, it's a pretty lame.
Still mad about that.
No, what's weird? So one of the first times when my first drive-by ching-chong experience was, I've had it's weird. I've had multiple ones, and I was with my parents, and I got I was already maybe past college, and it happened like on some family vacation somewhere, and I got really mad, and my mom was actually the one that was telling me, oh no, don't be so mad, like just to take it. And I think that is very much the difference between the immigrant mentality of, oh, they're visiting, we're in someone else's country, which by all means, like, I understand why they feel that way, and then us feeling like, hey, no, we have some skin in the game too, and we deserve to not be treated that way in America. I always thought that was really interesting.
Bare minimum, like, can you not hang out the window and do that racist shit to us? Like,
yeah.
But you drive by. Like,
you know what? I actually don't think I've ever had anybody ching-chong me like that. I mean, I've heard other variations of that phrase.
it's because you grew up in New York, so it's not that dry. Like,
Yeah, people
Yeah,
are throwing.
maybe Subway ching-chong. Like,
Don't tell me you never had anything happen to you on the subway.
Like a cab. They're hanging at a cab
Yeah.
saying that. I know, this actually, the equivalent for me was, I was driving in Texas and kind of got
Oh boy,
lost.
okay.
Right? Because, you mentioned somebody earlier, it just reminded me of this. I was lost, and I kind of had to actually find directions. And I know that this is the beginning of like all these bad horror movies. But, I was really lost, and it was Nowhereville, and it was still fairly bright out. So I didn't feel so bad about going up and just like, knocking on a door and asking. And so I was like, hey, I'm super lost. I'm trying to get to this highway. Can you give me some directions? And this guy is like looking me up and down and just breaks out into, she bangs.
oh my God.
Totally William Hung. But then told me how to get to the highway. Have a good day, William.
That was your payment. Like, you had to endure that in order to get the directions.
I'm glad we can laugh about it.
Time has passed.
Let's flip it a little bit. Who are some Asian American artists / creators that are bringing you joy currently?
I'm going to use this opportunity to shout out the illustrator, an artist of our cover, actually. Her name is Julia Guo. She drew every single one of these portraits right here. She has a book that came out today, a picture book called Let's Do Shit. That
doesn't sound like a good kid's book at all.
Everybody
Oh my
poops. Let's do shit.
Okay, it's called Let's Do Everything and Anything, or Let's Do Anything and Everything. You're gonna have to
Everything and nothing.
everything and nothing.
This is the worst shout out ever.
I
never want Phil to
totally
shout out
effed that
anything I
up,
ever
guys.
do.
I'm so sorry,
Microsoft
Julia.
Teams, everybody.
I'm so sorry, Julia, because I know this is being recorded for posterity.
we love you. We
We love you. And she's so talented, and she drew all the spaces, the fold-out spaces in the books as well, including every single, like 200 portraits, I think, for the book. But her picture book comes out today, and I'm not going to try to repeat it again because I've already effed it up once, but Julia...
I want to shout out 2 artists. I had the page, and then now you've made me lose it. The first one actually is right here in our audience, and that's Earl Yee, who's somewhere out there. Yo, there he is. Local, but he did a bunch of these incredible illustrations that we call undercover Asians, right? Which is about Asians who you didn't know were Asians. And actually Phil wrote the pieces, but his illustrations are hype, and they're just amazing. So we thank you for that. The other illustrator from the book who I'm like, oh man, just looking at this fills me with joy all the time. So our friend Xingyin Kor, she did an illustration that came out of this. Oh, this is Undercover Asians, by the way, one of the illustrations, right? There are, I think, 4 of them in the book, one for each of the sort of decades from before and then 90s, 20s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and they're amazing. But so Xingyin Kor did this illustration that's rooted in kind of this random idea.
This is Jeff's favorite piece in the book.
Totally my favorite piece in the book. And it's actually the best piece in our audiobook as well. It's called Stuff Asians Like. And it's literally just a litany of things that are not Asian that somehow Asians have managed to adopt and make our own, right? And it's stuff like crab legs and Danish cookie tins, Toblerone, badminton and ping pong. I mean,
it's funny because the audiobook is, in the book, it's just an illustrated list, right? And in the audiobook, the narrator's just going, Costco, Spam, crab legs. It's like...
It's the best.
It's awesome.
Yeah, the audiobook definitely leaves a lot to be it's not the same experience.
I've grown to love it. It has its own individual charm. I think.
Sure. Well, I want to give a shout out of joy to, and this kind of answers addresses another question here. We have one of our project manager on this book. Her name is Jess Vu, and we put her on the cover as well. She was basically the one that we brought on after we started the book. She was crucial to this book happening because when we had that massive list of pieces to do and all these different contacts going out everywhere, it's not just the interviews, but also we had to have an illustrator attached to it and just so much correspondence, all these meetings. She was the one that...
she made the trains run on time.
Yes, and kicked our butts when they were not running on time. She is a huge reason why this book exists, and also our editor, Jenny Xu, who, when we were pitching the book to different publishers, she was the only Asian female that was on the receiving end of our pitches, and that was. I've never been in the publishing world. These guys already have, so I didn't know what to expect. And so to see someone on the other side listening and then knowing how important this book was, that it didn't take a lot of convincing, and I know for a fact that on her side, she probably fought really hard to make sure that it came to HarperCollins or to the imprint there, meant so much. And again, this book wouldn't have happened without her pushing it forward and her recognizing that. So we've been surrounded by just incredible, women in this project as well to make this, exist, and we're extremely, extremely grateful.
Yeah, Jenny really understood, I think more than we did actually, what we were trying to do. I think she shared the vision and then beyond, I think, because she's the one who, when we're like, maybe we could do it this way, she's like, how about we make it a gatefold cover, and we're like let's add a bunch of all these layers to it.
Although I will say, the one idea that she had that still to this day, and we love the idea because it's awesome, right? But it's been a hang up ever since, right? So she was like, oh, you know what? These illustrations are so amazing. We should just like print the title of the book only on this flap of paper. This belly band.
Those who now have the book will soon realize like this is cool. It's not very functional. It's kind of annoying. Yeah.
It's like if you ever lose that thing, then the book is now called Facebook.
Asian Facebook.
That's
Asian
actually-
Avenue.
That's from my mom. It's like, oh, it's a Facebook.
There's so many questions, and I'm gonna try to actually. Look, I became the moderator here. Hey.
I know.
All right.
That happened?
There's a lot of questions that are just generally about how, and I think this is a good one to kind of close on because maybe it sends us off into the beyond and have some hope and give some direction. Just basically like, this book coming out in this period of time with so much going on for our community, all the violence, this increase in anti-Asian attacks. What is our perspective of this book coming out at this time, and where do we go from here? And there's a variety of questions that are all touching on this in terms of also solidarity with other communities, finding allyship as well, and also inspiring the youth to get involved. It's a lot. That's a very multifaceted question, but clearly it's very important to everyone here talking about. So I definitely wanted to address it.
I think to address one part of that question, there's a lot of questions in there.
Sorry, there are a lot of questions.
Look, to address what's happening right now, what's in the news, what's like assailing us on social media about what's going on, if anybody with a long view of Asian American history, they will know this is not new, right? What is happening right now, the violence against Asian Americans, is not new. It's new reasons and new kind of blaming, but like, you look throughout history, this has been happening for a long time. And anyone knows, as you've grown up here in America, you know the sense of feeling like, being made to feel like you do not belong here. Like you are a guest here, that you like somehow like you were here by someone else's sort of like permission, being made to feel like that. Despite, however, like when you came here or when you were born here or whatever, there's that feeling of like, being made to feel like I don't belong, even though you have every right to be here, So that's not a new thing. It's just taken on a new form, right? We've seen throughout history those moments. I do think that one of the reasons why we find ourselves in this place that we are, because we have such an ahistorical view of Asian America. Like, I feel like so many people all of a sudden just realize that like Asian Americans are here, that Asians are like a thing. How many people do you know who learned the term AAPI within the last year or two, right? All of a sudden it's being thrown on everywhere. I'm like, I've never heard this company use that term ever. All of a sudden people give a shit, right? That's new. This awareness is new, but like, it shouldn't be new. We should not have just suddenly realized that Asians exist in this country. We have such a shallow view of our history. Like, part of the reason why this book we brought it here and we tried to create this sense of our story is because there was a lack of it, right? Like, how many of us learned about Asian American history in a deep level, on a narrative level that is like beyond just like the railroads, incarceration camps, whatever else, you know what I mean? Like that is such we have such a shallow, and not just America as a whole, but even within our own community, we don't know our own stories, right? And I think we find ourselves here because we don't have that. And so that's part of the reason why we need to look at making sure our stories get told, because we don't want, this book is dedicated to the ones who come next, right? And I'm talking about our kids. We're all fathers now here. I'm talking about the people who did not have this, but also for the rest of us who did not have the benefit of having our stories told to us, The reason why we're doing this, and the reason why we're doing all the work that we do, aren't we doing it because we're just trying to make it easier for the next generation coming up? We're just trying to make it that much easier. They'll have their own struggles, they have their own challenges, but maybe they don't have to go through all the shit that we did, just a little bit less shit, I think.
I think that at the end of it, right, it is about that agency of who gets to tell stories, who gets to tell our own stories. Because everything that Phil mentioned, that cyclic history in which we have faced consistent degradation, oppression, exclusion, violence. Whenever America has encountered duress, whenever it has faced war, often war with our countries, whenever it has faced economic collapse or pandemic, right? We've seen the blame go to those who are easiest to blame. And it's always the people who can be othered and put outside, who can be told to go home, right? And that's a lot of us who are in this room. And the reason why that's possible is because our stories have not been woven into the greater story of America. And the stories that are told about us. Then they've been told about us since the 1800s, since the 1700s, since before there was an America. There were people saying we should go home because we don't belong. And they were saying that we brought disease, and they were saying that we were vermin, and we ate weird things, and that we were unassimilable, and that they were after our jobs and here to destroy our economies. These are the things we've heard since the very beginning. And again, those stories keep on being told to different ethnic groups in different times across all the decades from that beginning to now. Well, what we're seeing now finally is us telling our own stories, right? And when we can overwrite those stories that are told about us with stories that we tell for ourselves, maybe it gets people to see us as human. Maybe that is the armor that protects us when somebody feels like they want to drive by ching-chong us or drive by push us into traffic, right? So more than anything else, people ask, well, why is there so much pop culture in this pop history, right? It's a popular history, but a lot of it does talk about media and entertainment and things like that. It's because those are the attempts over the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s of us trying to rewrite our stories.
Yeah, I think personally for me, it's been, I'm sure for all of us, but yeah, it's even promoting this book amidst all these, just this constant wave of news and tragedy is really difficult because, yeah, you want to talk about the really serious issues, and at the same time we're trying to celebrate ourselves too. And I have gotten several comments of people saying, "Oh, I'm so glad that we have a little bit of light right now, in all this darkness," and that gives me a little bit of sense of feeling like, oh, okay, it's okay to talk about this and find some joy. But no, it's really challenging just because I know that there are very, very large challenges facing us right now, and there is no one quick fix. There's no one fix at all, quick or not. And all we can do is in our own lives try to create some type of change within our own sphere and hope that impacts a little bit beyond that sphere. And with this book, that's a little bit of what we're trying to do, but it doesn't have to just be in a product like this. It could be the way you're treating people. It could be the way that you're helping other communities. It could be in the way you're communicating how you're feeling. There's so many prongs of how we all play a part in progress for the Asian American greater diaspora. It's like whenever I see questions that I almost feel like they're coming to us as if we know any better than what we're struggling here too, and we're looking for answers. And what I'm realizing as I see social media, I think another reason why it feels different now is because social media just brings all the worst right in front of you, and it can be a lot, and it's very easy to fall into generalizing and fall into quick judgments. But that's literally what we're trying to avoid about us as Asians too. We don't want people to make quick judgments about us or generalize us. So there's just a lot to unpack, and it's that in itself is its own conversation. But just know that what we're trying to do is trying to put forth some positivity through the work and just plant one seed that hopefully can generate more inspiration of people in the community to create change in their own worlds.
I want to end maybe because we have to get to the next phase of this, which is signing books for those of you guys who have them or who want to buy them, with a little beat of magic. And I just was flipping through this, looking for something that was kind of a good way to end this off. So there's a friend of ours. He's more than a friend. He's like an inspiration. He's a role model. He's a YouTuber. He's a musician. His name is AJ Raphael. I don't know if you guys have heard his music, seen his videos. And you know, he's in the book not just because he's an iconic figure in these decades as a musician, as a performer, as a YouTuber, but also because he agreed to be in this hilarious set of modeling sessions we did, showing the different wardrobes that were common among young Asian Americans each of the decades. And so he was changing into one of his outfits, and all of a sudden I saw something on his arm that my mind exploded. I was like, dude, did you get that tattoo for us? And this tattoo, he said, no, I've had this tattoo for like years, but it sort of sums up what he feels. Like, we need to rise, right?
It's in the same font as our book. His tattoo is in the same font. It's so weird.
It's so weird.
I think that's an officially Microsoft licensed font, maybe.
Helvetica. No. But
Microsoft Teams.
The fact is, when we saw that, and we included it in the Beyond chapter, it felt to us like a summary of what kind of brought us all together around this idea that wherever we are, however dark it looks like, there is still that opportunity for us to find our way out, to rise above it. And we want to thank all of you guys for helping us get there and for keeping this book up there. And 5 years ago, I don't think this book could have existed. A few years ago, it might have existed, but it couldn't have gotten the New York Times bestseller lists,
I think that, like, to that point, it's showing that more and more people are caring, even like within ourselves, within our own Asian American community too. Like, there's been a lot of people that have been ashamed or have been afraid to be an Asian American anything. They just wanted to, just don't categorize me like that. And now there's people that are taking notice of themselves and from people outside of the community too. And I think that's where the true progress is happening, is that we're finally unafraid or less unapologetic about beating our chests, about speaking our minds, standing up for ourselves, being activists, standing with other communities. And I think that's where we're going right now. And that's what makes me very hopeful for the future.
So we want to do one thing, take an unapologetic selfie with all you guys. And then we would hope you guys come down and let us sign your books and buy more books if you want them. This has been amazing, guys. Thank you guys so much.
All right, smile. All right, video, and thanks everyone. Thank you, Seattle. Thank you, Seattle. Really, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
See you outside or downstairs? Is that where? Yeah. Thanks.